What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your movie podcast for reboots, remakes, sequels, adaptations, and everything else that's come before and will come again. As always, I'm your host, Blake Schultz, and with me is Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are talking about the next entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the fourth entry in the Captain America franchise, the start of the Sam Wilson as Captain America franchise and the continuation of the Disney Plus series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and sort of a backdoor sequel to the Incredible Hulk. So it has quite a lot to do, and not a lot of time to do it. The movie has come out to an interesting mix of reviews, and audiences seem to enjoy it, but critics don't. We'll also talk about the box office and how and why. And there's so many, oddly, a fair amount to talk about with this movie. So let's kick it off. Terrence, what did you think about the movie?
Yeah. Excuse me. Interesting. I went in probably a day after sort of like the MCU fans went on Thursday. I did make it to that event. I went to a Friday night event, and that's that point I had sort of heard a lot of the critic rumblings, and I heard some of the fans saying like, I actually enjoyed it. Like I don't know what everybody's talking about. So I had to go back in and like sort of reset my brain. And I watched the film, and I had a really good time. Do I think it's great? No. But I also don't think a great deal of the Marvel Cinematic films, where we're 30 plus films, a lot of them I wouldn't put in the great category. And I don't think I think what's happened over the 2 decades that we've gotten these is that we've been sort of, especially our younger folks who sort of were one when the first Cap came out, now they're like 20. They've been grown up and sort of fed the really, really good stuff. The Infinity Wars, the in games, the Black Panthers, they lived in that world. So now that we're sort of going back to where the phase ones were, where we're getting the Cap ones and the Thor ones and the Thor Dark Worlds and Iron Man 2's sort of base hits as opposed to the grand slams, they're kind of just like, nah, that's not good. And sometimes it's good to just have a palate cleanser, or sometimes just a movie that's like, this is good. This isn't great, but this tells me a story, gets me in and out, and I feel like I was satisfied with what they gave me here. And that's what I got here. I do think I don't want to give them too much of a soapbox, but I do think some of the critic score and some of the cinema scores. It's got a B minus cinema score, which is insane to me when I look at Quantumania and like getting a B. That is insane. And so I'm going to chalk some of this negativity up to people not wanting to see their Captain America look the way that Sam Wilson does versus looking like Steve Rogers. I think the political climate right now has a lot of people saying, hey, nah, I don't want that. And this movie has a black and Hispanic lead. It's the co-lead of the two of them as the leads. And so not all of it is towards that, but I do think there's a huge chunk of contingent of the country just like, nope, boo that movie. I don't want any parts of that, which is unfortunate because I think when it is all said and done, this movie does two things that I really needed it to do. One, didn't know I wanted an Incredible Hulk sequel, but I got it. And we catch up with Thaddeus Ross and actually make him a humane character, give him an arc that I was not expecting. And not gonna lie to you, I didn't. After what I saw in Indiana Jones, I thought Harrison Ford was just like, I'm going to sleepwalk through the rest of my career. No, he gave a fantastic performance in this, and I was like, oh, he's still got it. This man is still good, and a guy who is built with this rage that is building up to inside of him, but who also wants people to just believe like I'm a different person now. Like I'm trying to change, but you've done so much damage. Is it too late for you? That's just a great story arc. Two, they needed to make me believe that Sam Wilson could lead a team. And when this was said and done, I walked out of that. I was like, nope, I believe now that Sam Wilson could go ahead and reconvene the Avengers and he could be the perfect leader for this. Him being that person like, yeah, I want the serum, nah, but I'm not gonna take it. And like taking his lumps and still getting out to be the better man of the group, of the battle. That's what you want to see in your hero. And this movie made it so that like he is that centerpiece. He is the guy that going forward, I can see everybody sort of getting behind. Does it have issues? Sure. I think it recycles some plot beats from Captain America, but like this is a comic book movie, and we've done 30 of these. They're going to recycle everything at this point in time. They're going to do that just naturally. So it's now just more about getting the story to tell what it needs to get to tell, and I think it does that quite remarkably, actually.
Yeah, it's funny. We've now talked about, I don't know, more than half of the Marvel movies on this show.
Mhm.
And I try to always come at it through the lens of how they're adapting the character. And I've seen a lot of back and forth on it. I definitely disagree with a lot of the really low scores for it that I'm seeing because I did really enjoy it. I do think, uh, to your earlier point, that there are definitely some people that are just like, boo, the film. Where is my Steve Rogers? I do also think that there are some people that maybe had this overhyped and thought we were going to do something else.
Mhm.
And the whole movie to me feels incredibly reactionary. It feels like the filmmakers and Marvel Studios in general has now looked at, I mean, 5 years since Endgame, but
Mhm.
and everything, and they've looked at everything everybody has said and every criticism everybody's had, whether it's valid or not valid, and went, well, we need to make this Captain America movie work. And we ended up with the safest movie that I could have imagined.
Yeah.
Um, it feels like a 90s thriller, which is very exciting. I like that,
Opened
except that
without the
the
original Marvel logo, which is just, I was like, oh, that's a choice. Like
I
it
also
opened
dug
with it.
that.
Yeah, I
They
was like,
hooked
that's
me in
cool.
pretty
Yeah.
quick. So I liked that a lot. I didn't love, I mean, it's such a weird thing because I look at this movie and I go, man, what usually makes these political thrillers exciting is like the big twist or reveal. And it's not fair to compare this to Winter Soldier, but it is like I can't believe it's not Winter
In the
Soldier.
vein. Yeah.
It's like
It's
diet Winter
the light.
Soldier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just 1 calorie, not Winter Soldier enough. Um, and Winter Soldier also didn't have that great. I mean, if you knew the books and comics, it wasn't like a oh reveal like you knew.
But
But
I
I
will say,
guess
you might remember this. When we watched that in the theater, there was a great deal of the audience who had no clue and they were
people
shocked.
gasped.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That yeah, that was so good. That movie is still my favorite MCU movie.
Yeah.
But it's funny that the twist of this movie relies you on remembering like one specific scene from a movie from 2008, which is insane. And I know we've all wanted a Hulk sequel now forever, and I can't even remember how it works that Universal has the rights to the
To
name or
own Hulk
whatever
and the idea,
nonsense.
but not Banner. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's weird.
I don't remember anymore. It's exhausting. Um, but I did enjoy the like Mr. Blue stuff, and we did a good job
Mhm.
bringing that back in, getting Liv Tyler back. We've now brought everybody back. There's nobody I think left to
Yeah.
bring back in
You
any
can't
of
say,
these
yeah, you
movies.
can't
We're
like you're
done.
all coming back. You're
Yeah,
everybody's in.
unless
Pretty
we're
much.
bringing back Terrence Howard in the multiverse, and he's
Right.
going to be the roadie for Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. Which, yes,
I will take that.
like,
I think it's I do think too, this movie is sort of a triangle sequel to three movies or two movies in a show that didn't have that big of a great of a response. Like Incredible Hulk wasn't well received and it's very dated. Eternals was probably out of the most recent films, probably one of the ones that outside of Ant-Man that was like the most, nah, we don't want that movie. And Captain and the Winter Soldier, most people thought started off great, but because of the strikes and COVID and everything, didn't get to tell the story that it wanted to. So those three shows, those three things are the ones that this is sort of a sequel to. The audience isn't coming in with that much of groundwork already handled. So this movie tries to like the first 20 minutes is like trying to catch you up. And I'm like, this is if I didn't know what was going on, my head would spin.
yeah, it's and that's what I mean by when I'm like, man, they really listen to everybody on Twitter and they didn't need to because they spend so much time catching
Yeah.
you up. And I feel like so much of like the internet's reaction to these is like, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And this movie was like, okay, guys, here's what's going on with everything. If
At
you'll all
least
just sit down for 25 minutes,
we
we'll
don't have to see
say
that
it to
damn
you.
meme about like, well, no one has brought up this space thing that
It's
it's
brought up,
irrelevant.
yeah, we're done.
It's done. It's a wrap.
Um, But yeah, but if I had one more scene of him explaining why he didn't need the serum, I was gonna lose my mind. Because I thought about this today before we started recording. We're all so hung up on that, except for us and me, and I
Mhm.
don't care. It's a movie, I'll accept it. But we never question why Falcon could do all the things Falcon did in like underoos and goggles
Right.
and wings.
No protection literally
He's
anywhere else on his body.
He's flying at the speed of jets
Yeah.
in a tank top and red goggles.
Mhm.
And then he fights in Infinity War and
Yeah.
Endgame in that same and we never were like seems a little
It's why
exposed.
when Joaquin goes down in this, I'm like, see, that's what he was wearing this whole time, guys. This could have happened to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I don't understand why we're suddenly like, but the formula, which is like that we never questioned why like Batman can fight Clayface.
Yeah.
Even the first Iron Man, when he falls head first into the sand in a
Boom, boom, boom.
shitty suit,
Yeah.
and
Right.
is fine.
Yeah.
Like Black Widow and Hawkeye are out there fighting Chitauri, and no one's
Stacey
like, but
always
what
brings up, my
about
wife always brings
this?
up Black Widow's like, how is she not dead? Like she
Like,
is taking so many hits.
we've accepted so much from these movies, but it's perplexing that the army veteran who became a counselor, who was a paragliding first responder, suddenly can't throw a frisbee around that
Yeah.
already is made of fake metal while he
Right.
tries to go find another fake metal.
And
Oh,
is
if I had to do
covered in
one
fake
more
metal.
scene of
I
my like, thankfully I have my Wakanda wings,
was like,
I
guys,
was
we get
gonna
it. We
I
get
was
it.
gonna
Stop.
lose
Yeah.
my mind.
It was almost to the point
Um,
I was like, you don't even need to tell me this. Like just me seeing the glowing purple, I immediately like, got it. He's got
I
vibranium.
I do also agree. I saw a TikTok and I can't remember the creator, so I do apologize, but he made a great video that he thinks one of the biggest problems in the MCU is the digital masks. No one
I do
takes their
think, yeah, I
masks
saw
off
that. It just
anymore.
keeps automatically coming in.
Um, and I there was like when he lands and does it in this movie, I was like, yeah, you know what? A really powerful shot of him taking that off would have been awesome. That would have been way better than just and
Yeah.
it's all like I do want to see more of that,
I think
but
because Iron Man did it once and it was cool. Now every hero that wears a mask does it. I'm like, but part of that is
I
the Spidey like removing the mask off. That
and
like that's a piece of it.
I think it started with Star-Lord, doesn't it? That's the first time we see it in
The
Guardians when
nano,
he hits the
yeah, yeah,
side.
because that's pre
It's like
Infinity War.
him, then
Yeah.
Black Panther, and then we make fun of it in Black Panther. Oh,
We
let me
do.
remove my helmet.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, we can't do it now.
Now we're done because we've got
Um,
helmets.
all of that being said, the movie does have much stronger points. The action in it is awesome.
It's really good. That aerial fight scene is fantastic.
That is my one. Whenever people are like, "Yeah, it's not very good," I'm like, "Did you see him fly through the plane with his
Right.
wings and through the shield? Like, get some popcorn, enjoy the movie. This
I
is
was amped.
awesome."
And
Um,
the Red Hulk looked great.
he looks great. I do think there are some, like, I kept kind of
There's some
looking for the
CG
weak
issues.
CGI. There's
There's some weak CG.
some.
Yeah.
None of it bothered me that much, and the Red
Mm.
Hulk was a ton of fun. That fight was a ton of fun. Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford, everybody in the movie is
The
performing to
acting is
like a
really well done.
10.
Yeah, they're all doing
Um,
great.
And I enjoyed it, could have been amped up more, but I liked this weird political, like, we're all trying to get adamantium.
Hmm.
You're trying to steal it from us
Arms
to sell
race.
it back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was a cool thing we haven't really done. It's a shame that it kind of got put in the background because we just already knew who it was and what they were doing.
That's the thing.
Uh,
I think this movie, I mean, they did a good job of keeping him out of the trailers, but it was pretty obvious to everybody who knew that the leader was a part of this and that Tim Blake Nelson was back. So I don't know how you hide that, but
I
it
think you just play up that Ross is the
was
villain
the
for
villain.
longer. I think you just hold on to that until like the third act, and then you can have your dumb giant, your 15th scene of exposition that this movie likes to have to
Because I think
explain him.
that's the only thing that keeps this from being like a solid B going up to an A is that I was ahead of every piece of this film. And while I enjoyed the moments that I was getting, I kind of was like, oh yeah, well, it's the leader. And yeah, of course he's playing Ross. I get it. Like I know Ross was dying and like this all of this I saw. And so I'm like, I just kept saying like I need you to do something that shocks me or makes me like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And because I didn't get that once in this film, I'm kind of like, I can't put you on the tier of like the A lists of the MCU, but you're definitely not down here with like the Lord of the Dark Worlds of the world.
No, no, no. It's like it's safely in the middle.
Yeah,
And I'm not mad at that. And I also wish, and this is such a like a dumb nitpick of me, and it's such a like it might just be indicative of a bigger MCU multiverse problem. This movie really should have come out, if not immediately after Eternals, I would even argue before, because that post-credit scene of like, I've seen it, I've seen the analytics and the numbers, and I've predicted it. How
yeah.
will you save the world from the other worlds? I was like, man, that would have been a really cold moment if we haven't been talking about the MCU multiverse since
For like 2000, yeah.
2020. Like
Yeah.
I was just
There are
sort of like,
there
okay,
there are two films that I think would have been better suited with date adjustments in the MCU. One of them is Black Widow. That should have released because I think Black Widow is amazing. But I think you took a lot of the bite out of Black Widow, releasing it post Infinity War based on what happens to Black Widow or Natasha Black Widow. This is the other where I'm like, yeah, because a lot of people forgot about Eternals, and I feel like this would have also helped Eternals get a little bit more shine, and have a little bit more
yeah.
purpose. Whereas now people are like, oh, cool, they'll just give me the cliff notes of it. I think if you put this right on the tail end of that, you would have gotten to a better like, okay, this is I can see where this story is going. There seems to be a through line and a purpose that we're going through. Whereas now it just seems like, oh, we're scattershot. Let's go ahead and tell that piece that we forgot about a long time ago.
Yeah, I know we talked about years ago how like phase four was mostly about grief, and it oddly was
Hmm.
building up to Wakanda Forever, which was about everybody's collective grief.
Just grief all
Um,
everywhere.
and I kind of the idea of having a phase that was like saying goodbye to the surviving Avengers was exciting. I wish that this had almost kicked off phase five and that phase five had been about the rebuilding of
Let's
it and that you
reintroduce
could
the
have had a
villains.
Thunderbolts and a new Avengers
Mhm.
and then we could have done Kang or built Kang up in the background more instead of just pushing him right into the front. And it would have helped also if, Kang wasn't a villain in real life and we could
If
have
he
kept
wasn't a
going.
bad person in real life.
I
Yeah.
know, but
I
I now
think
I
I think that sort of is the biggest issue that's kind of happened to the MCU lately. They've just kind of just had gotten snake bitten between this and something that they just could not happen to see is the Chadwick of it all. That's who was supposed to probably be the face of this going forward. And then when that happened, that just threw sort of a wrench in everything. And so now I think they've been kind of trying to build on the fly. And I think they're now sort of starting to get their footing again. Like, all right, this is our bona fide leader. Now let's build around him.
I think that's how this felt to me. It felt like, to use NBA terms, that this is who we're going to build the team around and do a full rebuild, blow it all up,
Right.
do what Jerry Reisendorf isn't doing, and blow the whole thing up, and restart. Like it almost felt to me like this was a like, hey guys, forget. We're so sorry. I hope you enjoyed some of it. I enjoyed some of it. Brave New World, we're going.
Right.
Which is funny because I feel like it's actually the end of a phase, isn't it? Isn't like this and Thunderbolts like the
It feels
conclusion?
like this is the end of phase five because I think Fantastic starts six.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we've like it's kind of it's so funny that we put Kang front and center and we probably did a better job mimicking how the Infinity Stones were in the background. They were the MacGuffin of all the movies and Thanos was in the background. We've done a better job of almost assembling the Thunderbolts, movie by movie and show by show and having Val
Right.
in the background.
Yeah.
And I'm almost like, oh, we should have been focusing like this is. I really wanted, my whole thing after Endgame was that we should have completely ignored space and the multiverse. We shouldn't have
Straight
done
up.
anything. Yep. And it should have been Daredevil, Spider-Man, Cap 4. And it should have been like Norman Osborn or Val or whoever building the Dark Avengers. And then when that was over, we could have gone big again. I really was like, get back in the street, like get back
Yeah.
down there.
Especially
But
when you
I
go
do,
as big as Infinity War and Endgame did, you have to sort you can't get bigger than that. Not right out the bat anyway.
I do think it's interesting, and this is also where I'm conflicted. I'm curious what your opinion is. I thought they did a really good job of adapting who Anthony Mackie as Captain America is, and the Red Hulk and Thunderbolt Ross, as characters. I felt like their characters were good and their performance was good. Thematically, though, I feel like we didn't go very far. I feel like when
Hmm.
Cap got the shield in the comics, there were a lot more um, issues dealing with, well,
I
issues.
it's
Um,
so weird. I know where you're going. I feel like the TV series was significantly better at handling race because that's what it is. Like it's like that's a big piece of who Cap is. This Cap is, and his place and like how the world accepts that Cap. And the show does that quite well with both Isaiah and him. Here, it's almost like, hey, I hope you've seen the show. We're not bringing any of that up here because this audience is a mainstream audience, and we don't want to piss any of them off. Which I understand to an extent, but sometimes I'm like, you got to have a bite. Like, and that's what this film at the end of the day, outside of not
doesn't
having a
have.
shock, doesn't have a bite. And I think you might have to piss off a couple of people here to give it that bite. But like the fact that like it's always it's mentioned, but not. like the conversation that they have at the very end with
It's my favorite part of
it's
the
great,
movie.
the
I
greatest
know
part of the
what it's
movie.
like to feel like you have to.
Yeah,
And
and
when in
like
Falcon's like,
this,
I want the pressure though. I'm like,
yeah.
ooh, I
I
like
was like,
this.
this needed to be spread throughout the film because this is what the thesis of this movie is for a black man to put on that mask and whatnot and to kind of be the guy for the world. But when I knew I wasn't going to get that, it's at the very beginning when he's at the bar and everybody's like, hey Cap," and it's a whole bunch of white people, and I was like, oh, I don't think we're doing that at all in this movie.
I
And
also kind of dug that scene, but
I get
that's
it.
but it's also, that's funny because that's almost what I wanted more of from this phase was like the street level part. Like he's gonna be cool at the bar and everyone's gonna
Right.
like him here, and then when he goes out into the bigger world, people are like, "What the hell is this?"
Why is
Um,
this guy? Where's Steve?
yeah, and it is a shame because there's small moments where they do it right. Thunderbolt Ross calls him boy, and he has that
Hmm.
moment where he's
And
like,
that
"You
moment,
called
that's
me
a good one
boy."
too. Yeah.
Um, it's there. And it's the same thing that bothers me when they first start talking about the assassination attempt and they're like, Isaiah wasn't in his right mind. And everyone's like, what do you mean? I was like, why isn't Cap just being like, guys, the Winter Soldier
Right.
happened?
Yeah.
Even when he's
We've
like,
all been here.
there couldn't be somebody inside of my inner circle. Hydra was inside of Shield. Like
She's
I
a
just
former Black Widow. What are you talking
Oh,
about?
I also of all the characters that I really really liked, that was the one where I was like, can we
Get
just
her off the
get
screen.
Sharon Carter or
Yeah.
Yelena
Like,
or
what is Yelena? Like, get her
somebody
off the
like
screen. Yeah.
um that was yeah that was such a miss
It
of
was
a
a throwaway. And
opportunity.
I think that's a character that the reshoots had the most effect on, uh, was her because of everything that's happening politically. She had the
Yeah,
biggest sort of effect on her. And I also think that's why this film probably got toned down because that boy line is definitely hits hard. And I
it's there.
probably had
Yeah,
more of them in it, but they're like, let's bring all of this back.
and
And
it's
that
like
sucked.
it's hard to do because you don't have a villain that centers around that. Like they in
Correct.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they really built around that idea and kind of having him deal with it in this where the story is really just like the leaders poisoned the president and becoming the Red Hulk is like
Right.
it isn't really the time for
So
Cap to
race
be
isn't a
like
thing about, yeah.
well because he's fighting the Hulk, like was he gonna
Correct.
pause in the middle of that battle and be like wait
Right.
um so it but there were just so many good moments with it, even like him flying and then having that moment of like Captain America has stopped the planes. And I was like,
Mhm.
this would have been a cool climax of him kind of like
If they were all originally
being Captain
saying that's not
America.
Cap, that's not Cap,
Yeah.
that's Sam Wilson, that's not Cap. Like that would have
Yeah.
been that would have worked if you had a whole bunch of people saying that's not Cap, that's Sam Wilson, and then
Yeah.
he saves him like, all right guys,
Captain
Captain America
America
got it
saved
done.
the
Yeah,
day. Yeah,
yeah,
that would have been a cool little moment. Um, I just wonder because even if you take that theme of it out, I felt like it wasn't very deep in any other areas. Like we've done
no,
so much
it's
brainwashing.
surface level. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
like
the
we
stuff
don't
we've done
even
before, it's surface level. There's nothing that we really
nothing's challenging. It's not very
no.
challenging because even Ross just being like, "Well, my daughter isolated me, and guys, I've kind of been a villain." But also, I was like, "Sure, I guess." Like he's the literal villain against the Hulk, and then we see him again in Civil War and again in Black Widow and briefly in Game.
Yeah,
And after the Hulk, he's never really a villain. He's
I
more
mean,
just like has a different opinion about
yeah, like
things.
because like with the Accords, half the team agreed with him, so he's not quite villainous.
Right. Like he's almost always just more like, hey guys, it would be really cool if we weren't terrorists.
If the ones
I
that can
just
like blow up an entire city were under control.
I just think it would be cool if we didn't go into other countries and blow shit up. That's
That's an
my
idea.
just
Yeah,
my thought. Um it is I Harrison Ford was really good in it. It is kind of it is very sad that William Hurt didn't get to
I know.
finish this
I do.
arc.
I've sat there the whole time. I was like, oh, I like Harrison Ford in this, but I feel like William Hurt could have killed this too. Like, I feel like he would have done a really good
It
job.
would have been really fun. Uh, but yeah, even that to me just wasn't deep enough. Even the like him having this like prisoner of the leader, like,
Hmm.
and I don't want to be sympathetic to the leader, but I think they could have done a little bit more of like, yeah, he's a
How,
super villain, but we did
but we
cage
did torture
him.
him and
Like,
lie to him and basically make him do our bidding. So I kind of see why he is the way
yeah,
he is.
like we could have made a much more sympathetic Thanos type, is he right, is he wrong,
Right.
super villain. Um, because I kind of like the inverted Rain Man of him just being like, I know the stats and I know the data.
Yeah.
And I like Giancarlo Esposito's like, they said there was a 77% chance you were going to try to calm me down, Captain America. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say during a battle, but I like
But I
it.
like it.
I like that
Um,
he's just left in the prison with
I
his
do,
like, when I
right,
get
I
out, I'm going to
do.
kill you.
I was like, that's a great line, and I hope you do get to attempt that because you are fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
I,
there's
I think
so
I, I think I like the fact that he and Leader probably are both going to show up at some point in time because I genuinely liked young Carlos Stanton. Leader was fine. I think he can be better once the writing sort of gives him
he
a little
would
bit
be
more
really
leeway.
fun to toss into a multiverse
Yeah,
story and
yeah,
see like you're gonna they need him. We have to go and be
right.
like, what's the best odds? It's
Yeah,
almost doing what Doctor Strange did. I saw 8 million and we won one. You could
hmm,
almost have him like with a bunch of chalk
yeah,
all around him and equations and be like, I've figured out you have the most likely chance of stopping the multiverse if you
right.
do this, but here's what it'll cost. Um, like you, yeah, there's a lot you can do. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fine. I don't think it's not worth being mad about. Like it's certainly not the worst Marvel movie.
No,
It's
I
just
just
so
think
weird
I
with any movie to be like, nah, it's fine. Like,
yeah, and I think that's where we're at. Like, I think people expect it to either hate it or love it, and this is very much like, oh, this is good, it's fine. I do think it's at 50% or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes.
Rotten Tomatoes is
There
a
should be a six.
50% tomato meter and 80% from the audience. So that's
Yeah, and I feel
a
like the critics
wild
should probably
discrepancy.
that is a wild discrepancy, and I feel like it should probably critic wise like a 65. Wherever Thor Dark, I know Thor got like something like 60 or something like that. Like that's where it should sort of be. I don't think it's 50-ish, but yeah, Thor Dark World got a 67%. If that got a 67%, this should be at least around the 65 to 70 range.
Yeah, I would
But
agree with that. And I think when you get into the sport of it all, the scores and the box office and these metrics of success and what audiences want, I think it's pretty obvious that audiences want this.
right,
I think our metric for success is a little skewed. I don't have the budget for this movie in front of me. I know that the reshoots ballooned it, but Forbes did a very interesting article that I'll do the cliff notes of comparing this to what the other Marvel, the air quotes, flops were. So Captain America's opening sat at 88 million, the Marvels at 46 million, the Eternals at 71 million, Ant-Man at 106 million, Thor 2 85, Iron Man 2 at 128. So it's kind of right in the middle of all the other times that we've been like, it didn't make enough money,
hmm,
um, which is strange because then when you look at the Captain America numbers, the first one only made 65 million,
yeah,
earned 370 total, 95 for Winter Soldier, 179 for Civil War. So it's at the bottom end of that too. But I think then when you look at the Valentine's Day box office numbers, it's like higher up than other
hmm,
Valentine openings, save for Kingsman and Deadpool.
right.
So it's a really kind of hard one to gauge because it's very easy to look at this and be like, nah, I don't know if this really did it, or if it needs to make I don't think it needs to make $1 billion to break
No,
even, like
I think
Ant-Man 3 did.
I saw a number, I think it was like 450 million is it's
That
what it's
seems
break even for. And
very
that
doable.
seems doable because they're already at like 180-ish worldwide or something like that. So, and I don't think there's 192.4 worldwide is their global right now. And that's about 2 million higher than the projected. And like to the point, I know the cinema score says B minus, but like I said, I think there's a little bit of weirdness happening in that. But that Rotten Tomato score says fan says 80. So the word of mouth about this is like, I don't know what people are talking about. It's good. Go see it for yourself. And that's kind of what I've seen the most response for. Is like, I'm not gonna tell you it's good or great or bad. I'm saying it's a decent movie. You should go see it, make your own opinion for it. And that's what I've seen as the
Yeah,
discourse. And that should be the discourse
that
for
should
any
always be.
movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is interesting. I don't know exactly. February 17th was the wide date for Ant-Man 3. This was Valentine's Day. Black Panther was February 16th, and then Deadpool was February 12th. And if I look at Box Office Mojo's openings, obviously it's Black Panther at number one with 202 million opening, then Deadpool at 132, then Ant-Man at 106, and then Cap 4 at 88. So once you get out of Marvel, the highest Valentine's Day movie is 50 Shades of Grey and then Passion of the Christ, which is a fascinating back to back.
Wow, those are two
Uh,
completely different movies. Okay.
and then after those two, it drops into the 60 millions with the Lego movie and Sonic the Hedgehog. So it's like it's a tough
Okay.
one to read. Like it's one of those ones where it's like, well, by the metric of Captain America, it's better than the first one, but not as good as when we were like peak hype Marvel.
Right.
In terms of the quote unquote Marvel flops, it's in the middle, but it doesn't have to make $1 billion. And it's the fourth highest Valentine's Day
Yeah.
weekend movie of all. Uh, like,
Yeah. It's weird. Uh, I don't think there's any major. The monkey, I think, is the biggest release
oh
next
yeah,
week.
so it'll make more money
So
next
it'll
week.
be fine. Yeah. Like there's
Everyone's gonna go
nothing.
talk to their friends and be like, "But I read a review that said it was bad," and their friend is gonna be like, "I thought it was fine."
Yeah.
Do you want to see Anthony Mackie fight the Hulk? Then this is where
This
you
is a
go
good
do
time.
that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's our show, folks. So we will be back next time. But until then, you can follow us on Twitter at Hollywood80i. You can follow our YouTube channel that Terrence runs at Hollywood Already Did It for trailer reactions and television show reviews. And we're on TikTok at Hollywood Already Did It. I'm at As Always Blake, and Terrence is at Terrence Tatum. We will see y'all on the next one.
Later.